It started at Steve and Nicole's housewarming party. Funny thing is, I didn't even want to go. It had been a long week at work, and I was dead tired. One of those weeks where everything drags and your brain feels like it's covered in fog. I told Brooke we could just send a gift and make an appearance next time. She looked at me with that practiced half-smile and said, "Come on, it'll be fun. We can be social for once." And just like that, I was putting on a button-down I didn't even like and mentally prepping myself to make small talk with people I barely remembered from other gatherings. Their house was nice. Big open floor plan, fancy island in the kitchen, string lights across the backyard, the kind of place people buy when they're trying to prove something. Everyone looked happy, at least on the surface. People hugged too hard, laughed too loud, and drank like their jobs depended on it. I was on my second beer before I even found a chair. Brooke, of course, lit up as soon as we walked in. She always does in those kinds of environments. She's the type who can slide into any group, charm people within seconds, laugh just the right amount at just the right moments. I used to admire that about her. Now I'm not so sure. She drifted away from me almost immediately, talking to Steve's coworkers, then to some old friend of Nicole's. I stayed planted near the grill, half listening to some guy explain his startup and nodding politely while my eyes followed Brooke across the yard. I watched her laugh too loudly, place her hand on someone's arm a beat too long, lean in too close to whisper something that made another guy's face turn red. I told myself not to overthink it. I always do. But then it happened. The moment that burned into my brain like a bad dream I keep waking up to. She was by the outdoor bar, talking to a guy I hadn't seen before. Tall, clean-cut, probably worked in finance or PR or something equally polished. He handed her a glass of wine. She took it with a smirk and said, loud enough for people to hear, "I think I'd trade my husband for a guy like you, if you bring me a decent glass of wine." And then she laughed. That same laugh she used to give me, years ago when things were still warm between us, and ran her fingers lightly across his chest. She kissed his cheek. Just a peck, sure. But not the kind that wives usually hand out to strangers at parties. Not in front of their husband. Not with that tone. Not with that look in their eyes. A few people around them laughed nervously. The guy chuckled, probably thinking it was his lucky night. I stood frozen, holding my drink and trying to pretend I hadn't heard what I just heard. But I had. Every syllable. And then she looked at me. It wasn't one of those caught in the act, panicked looks. No. It was calm, calculated. Her eyes locked with mine from across the patio and, I kid you not, she shrugged. A tiny gesture, a flash of indifference. Like she was saying, relax, don't be dramatic. It's just a joke. That look said more than any argument we've ever had. I didn't say anything at the time. I stayed for another hour, nodding through conversations I wasn't part of, smiling when people looked my way. I even helped Steve clean up a few beer bottles. But inside, something had shifted. A thin crack had appeared in whatever was left of the trust between us. On the ride home, she was humming along to some song on the radio, like nothing had happened. When we got inside, she kicked off her heels and poured herself another glass of wine. I finally asked, as gently as I could, "What was that back there?" She blinked at me, like I was speaking another language. "What do you mean?" "At the party," I said. "The thing you said to that guy." "Oh," she said with a laugh. "That? You're not seriously upset about that, are you?" It was a joke. Everyone laughed. I just stood there. She sighed, louder this time. "God, you take everything so seriously. Can't I have a little fun?" It was harmless. "Harmless?" I asked. "You told a stranger you'd trade me for wine. You're blowing this way out of proportion," she snapped, putting her glass down harder than necessary. "You've been in a mood all week. Maybe that's what this is really about." And just like that, it was my fault. I didn't know how to take a joke. I didn't know how to loosen up. I didn't know how to have fun. I tried to explain how it looked, how it felt, but she just kept waving it off like I was being irrational. Eventually, I stopped talking. I went to bed in silence while she stayed downstairs scrolling through her phone. Lying there, staring at the ceiling fan spin, I kept replaying her voice in my head. The tone, the timing, the words. I kept seeing her hand on that guy's chest. I kept thinking about the shrug. It's strange how a marriage can fracture over something so small. But it wasn't small. Not really. It wasn't about the line she said or the kiss on the cheek. It was the intention behind it. It was the way she knew I'd heard and didn't care. It was the way she *p***nized humor to test the boundaries, to see how far she could push without me breaking. And honestly, I didn't even know what scared me more, the fact that she said it. Or the fact that I wanted so badly to believe it meant nothing. Because if it was really just a joke, then I could sleep. If it was just a moment of wine-fueled attention-seeking, then I could forgive it. But if it was more, if it was a glimpse into what she actually felt, then I'd have to face something I wasn't ready to deal with. Not yet. I remember thinking, maybe this is what people mean when they say they knew long before they knew. That quiet ache in your chest, the way everything starts to feel a little off, a little sideways. You can't prove anything. Nothing's technically happened. But the truth still presses against the inside of your ribs, heavy and unavoidable. I wanted to shake it off. I really did. But from that night on, something between us felt different. Like a wire that had quietly snapped behind the walls. You can't see it, but you can feel it every time the lights flicker. And deep down, I think she knew it too. After the party, things didn't fall apart all at once. That's not how it works in real life. There's no dramatic crash. No shouting in the rain. It's slower, quieter, like a hairline fracture spreading through glass. Barely noticeable until the whole thing shatters. The joke, if you could call it that, kept replaying in my head. Not just the words, but her delivery. The way she smiled when she said it. How easily it slid out of her mouth. Like she'd said it before. Maybe not to me. Maybe not to anyone in particular. But somewhere, in some form, she'd tested that sentence before. And the guy? He didn't seem surprised. That haunted me more than I cared to admit. Still, I let it go. At least outwardly. I told myself I was overreacting, that she was just being playful. That it was alcohol, atmosphere, nerves. I blamed everything but the feeling that had settled in my gut like a stone. But once the seed was planted, it grew fast. I started noticing things. At first, they were small. She started leaving for meetings after hours. Not unusual, she worked in client services, but the meetings got later, longer. Sometimes she wouldn't get home until after 10. I'd ask who it was with, and she'd throw out vague names I didn't recognize. Sometimes she wouldn't name anyone at all. Just one of the new guys, she'd say. Don't worry about it. Her phone changed too. She used to leave it face up on the counter, sometimes unlocked. Now it was always face down, locked, silent. She'd get notifications and flip the phone over like she was hiding something, then act like she hadn't even noticed it buzz. And then there were the showers. She started taking her phone into the bathroom, not just leaving it nearby, taking it in, like she couldn't stand to be away from it, even for 10 minutes. I told myself it was normal. People scroll in the shower. Maybe she was listening to a podcast. But I knew better. I told myself not to snoop. I've always hated the idea of surveillance in a relationship. If you have to look through someone's phone, then you've already lost, right? But then came the GPS thing. She drives a mid-sized SUV, nothing fancy, but it has built-in GPS tracking I can access from our shared account. I never used it. Never had a reason to. Until one Sunday afternoon when she told me she was heading to her office to catch up on paperwork. Something about it felt off. I couldn't explain it, it was just a feeling. Like the lie didn't fit her mouth properly. So I checked. Nothing. Her location was disabled. Not lost, not glitched, disabled. That was the moment something cracked in me. Not all the way, not yet. But something shifted. Before then, I was still convincing myself it was nothing. After that, I started keeping mental notes. There were other changes too. Her wardrobe, for one. Brooke had always dressed well. Nothing extravagant, but she cared about her appearance. Lately, though, there was a shift. Shorter skirts, higher heels, lingerie tags in the trash for items I never saw her wear around me. New perfume that lingered in the hallway after she'd already left. When I commented on it, something neutral like, new perfume, She'd smile without looking up and say, "Oh yeah, just trying something different." And the yoga thing, that one really got to me. She started going to a new studio, said it was a better instructor, more intense classes. At first, I offered to drop her off or pick her up, just to be nice or maybe to feel included. She shut that down fast. "No, it throws off the routine," she said once. "I stay after to stretch and decompress. I need the headspace." One Sunday, I drove by the studio around the time she said she'd be finishing. The place was closed. The windows were dark. No cars in the lot. When I asked later how the class was, she smiled and said, K***lr. My thighs are on fire. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I went back through my memories. Things that hadn't felt strange at the time now took on new meaning. Like the time she got a text during dinner and said, "Ugh, he's texting again." And when I asked who, she just waved it off with, "No one. Work." Or the night she came home late and went straight to the shower without saying a word, and I noticed the faintest hint of cologne on her coat that didn't belong to me. I asked myself, when did I start feeling like a guest in my own marriage? When did her presence stop feeling like home? There was a moment, about a week after the party, when I walked into our bedroom and saw her standing in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse. She was checking herself out. Not in a vain way, more like she was rehearsing. Like she wanted someone else to notice how she looked. And it wasn't me. She caught me looking in the mirror's reflection and said, "Do I look okay?" "You always do," I said. She smiled, but not at me, at herself. That smile broke something in me. It wasn't bitterness. Not yet. It was something colder, detachment. It's hard to explain what it feels like to live next to someone you once loved deeply and realize they're slipping away in real time. It's not dramatic. It's not always painful. Sometimes it's just numb, quiet. You start to recognize patterns, like how she used to touch your back when she passed behind you in the kitchen. She doesn't anymore. How she used to laugh from her gut. Now it's polite, filtered. One night, I woke up and found the bed empty. I walked downstairs and saw her sitting on the couch in the dark, phone in hand, her face dimly lit by the screen. When she saw me, she clicked the phone off so fast it might as well have burned her. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Just scrolling." She never told me what she was scrolling. A few days later, I watched her take a call on the porch. She saw me through the kitchen window and turned her back to me. She was laughing, really laughing, in a way I hadn't heard in months. I opened the sliding door just as she was hanging up, and she jumped. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work. Chill." She was defensive, edgy. I nodded and let it go. But inside, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. There's this phrase I once heard, I don't know where, that said, cheating doesn't start with touching. It starts with secrets. And that's what I felt like I was drowning in. Not facts. Not evidence. Secrets. Little ones. Compounding. Layered. Slippery. And me? I kept playing dumb. Not because I was naive, but because if I confronted it, I'd have to accept it. And once you accept that the person you share your life with is lying to your face, everything else changes too. Your home stops feeling safe. Your routine becomes a performance. Even your memories start to rot. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. But deep down, I knew. The woman I came home to, who smiled at me over takeout, who kissed my cheek and called me babe, who laughed at sitcoms and poured wine like everything was fine, wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Not in the way that matters. She was somewhere else. With someone else. And the worst part? I was starting to get used to it. It broke on a Tuesday. Not a special day. Not an anniversary. Just a plain, gray Tuesday. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It hits when you're distracted, when your defenses are low, when you've almost convinced yourself everything's okay. I had finished up early at a job site about 40 minutes outside town. It was cold, overcast, and I remember the silence in the truck being heavier than usual. Normally I'd call Brooke and tell her I was heading home, maybe see if she wanted anything on the way. But that day, I didn't. I just drove. It wasn't a gut feeling. Not exactly. More like, resignation, a quiet readiness for whatever I might walk into. I pulled into the driveway just after 5 o'clock, earlier than usual. The house looked normal from the outside. Lights off, blinds half open. Her car was gone. So was mine, technically. She'd taken it earlier that morning to get the tires checked. I'd almost forgotten. Inside, the house felt colder than it should have. Not in temperature, in tone. Empty. Still. I set my keys down and stood in the foyer longer than I meant to, listening for signs of life. Nothing. No footsteps. No hum from upstairs. No music from her phone playing in the kitchen. I checked the counter. No dinner started. No note. No candle burning, which she usually did if she got home first. I checked my phone. No texts. No missed calls. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then finally typed, "Hey, you heading home soon?" No reply. 10 minutes passed. I busied myself with nothing. Watered a plant, tightened a drawer knob that didn't need it. I kept glancing at the door, like it was supposed to offer answers. Nothing. Then my phone lit up. Not a call, just a text. 5 words. "I'm not your property. Don't call." That was it. No greeting. No apology. No explanation. Just cold, clipped distance. I stared at the message like it was in another language. I read it again. And again. Each time it landed harder. I didn't even feel angry. No yelling. No pacing. No throwing things. Just a switch. Like something clicked inside and all the noise went still. I sat down calmly and replied, "Then I'm no longer your husband. Don't come back." Then I turned off my phone. I sat in the silence. For maybe 5 minutes. Then it buzzed once. Twice. Then a flood. 30 missed calls in 10 minutes. 3 voicemails. More texts, rapid fire, backpedaling, panicked. But I didn't read them. I didn't need to, because something had already shifted. The curtain had finally dropped, and the show was over. I went upstairs. Not to cry, not to pack, just to think. That's when I saw it. Her laptop sitting open on the desk in the bedroom. The screen lit up from sleep as I passed by. No password prompt. Just the home screen. And one open window. The photo gallery. I froze. Her phone must have auto-synced. I knew I shouldn't. I knew whatever was waiting there would change things forever. But I clicked anyway. There were dozens of recent photos. Some innocent brunch, her coffee, a new pair of boots. But then, there he was. The guy from the party. The tall one with the wine and the cheek kiss. Several pictures. All close. Cozy. The kind of int asterisk Macy you don't fake. One was clearly taken in a bedroom, not ours. I looked at the curtains. Light gray linen. Not hotel. Personal. Int asterisk mate. Her hair was wet in one. She wore a robe. He was shirtless. I clicked through the details. Timestamps. Location data. All recent. All while she told me she was in meetings or out with the girls. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a while. I stared at the screen, but I didn't feel rage. Not even heartbreak. Just clarity. A kind of bone-deep certainty that comes when the truth finally settles. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need more photos. I didn't need to hear her say it out loud. Because truth doesn't need proof when you hear it with your own ears. And a long time ago, maybe weeks, maybe months, I had already heard it. In her tone. In her excuses. In the way she started calling me, "Hey," instead of my name. In how she stopped asking if I was okay, or how my day went, or if I'd eaten. In how she stopped being part of the us. I closed the laptop and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked around the room we used to share. The framed photo on the nightstand of us on vacation. The scarf she'd thrown over the chair last night. Her book, face down on the pillow like she'd be back to read it. I didn't touch any of it. Instead, I got up and opened the closet. I pulled 2 suitcases from the back and started packing. Not out of spite. Not as some kind of dramatic gesture. But because I was done. Not heartbroken. Not broken at all. Just finished. I packed her clothes with care. Neatly. Folded. Everything she might need. I didn't toss things. I didn't rip anything up. I didn't leave notes. I just packed what was hers, and only hers. Because that's the thing. Once you truly know something's over, the anger dies. The bargaining dies. Even the sadness dies. All that's left is decision. I carried the suitcases downstairs and left them by the front door. I didn't know when she'd come back. But I knew she wasn't coming back to me. Not really. I sat on the porch, listening to the quiet of our neighborhood, and realized I felt more peace in that stillness than I had in months. When she finally got home, hours later, the lights were off. I didn't greet her. I didn't even stand. She knocked, realizing the door was locked. I opened the chain lock an inch and said, "Your things are packed. Please don't make this harder." She stared at me like I was a stranger. I handed her the suitcases. She didn't say a word. She looked past me into the house, like she couldn't believe it was happening. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I just handed her the wedding ring. Mine, not hers, and said, "You already left. I'm just catching up." Then I shut the door, locked it, turned off the porch light, and for the first time in a long, long time, I slept like a man who finally heard the truth. She came back the next morning. I heard the knock before the sun even touched the living room windows. Just 3 knocks, soft, uncertain, like even she wasn't sure she should be there. I didn't answer right away. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching the steam curl in the morning light. I knew it was her. No one else would show up at 6:15 in the morning after what happened the night before. Another knock. I opened the door partway. Her face looked nothing like the woman from the night before. The panic was there now. The mascara was smudged from a night of crying, and she was wearing a sweatshirt I didn't recognize. Probably his. I didn't think you'd actually. Actually what? I asked, voice even. Have boundaries? She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked down. The suitcases were still on the porch. She hadn't taken them, just left them there, like she was hoping if she waited long enough, they'd disappear, that the whole thing would disappear. She stepped forward like she was about to come in. I moved into the doorway and shook my head. No, that one word froze her. You don't get to just walk in anymore. Her mouth trembled. Please, can we talk? I didn't argue. I didn't invite her in. I stepped back, grabbed her things, placed the bags beside her on the porch, and handed her an envelope. Inside, her personal documents, spare keys, and a note with a time to pick up the rest. She looked at the envelope like it was a bomb. Is this really happening? She whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her a monologue. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just looked stunned, like someone had pulled the script out of her hands mid-performance and left her standing on stage, exposed. I closed the door and locked it again. She texted 2 hours later. I didn't mean it. I was upset. Can we please talk today? Then another. You're overreacting. It was just a rough patch. And finally, I need to come by and grab a few more things. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I didn't reply until the afternoon. Saturday, 10 to noon. The rest will be in the garage. That was it. No warmth. No opening. Just logistics. The following Saturday, she showed up with a friend. Becca, someone I barely knew. She hovered like a reluctant accomplice while Brooke moved through the garage collecting the rest of her things. I didn't help. I didn't even make eye contact. Becca looked at me once, halfway through lifting a box of clothes, and said, "She's not doing well." I nodded. She waited, like she expected me to say something back. Maybe something like I'm not either. But I wasn't going to lie. I was doing fine. Not because I was cold, but because I had finally stopped pretending. The next few days were quiet. I thought that might be the end of it. But Brooke doesn't let go easily. Not when comfort is at risk. She started calling again. Blocked numbers. Unknown names. She left voicemails like we were still in the middle of something. Please, just call me back. I need closure. I'm seeing a therapist now. I'm working on myself. Isn't that what you always wanted? Funny how fast someone works on themselves when their safety net disappears. I didn't answer. Not once. Eventually, she started negotiating. That's what it became. A slow drip of desperation, masquerading as maturity. First, she sent me a voice memo, 3 minutes of crying followed by, "I understand why you're hurt, but we built a life together. Don't throw it away." Built? She threw it away. I just picked up what was left. Then she sent a photo. Us at the lake house 3 summers ago. Happy. Before everything shifted. "Remember this?" she wrote. "We were so good then." Yes, we were. Because back then I was useful to her. When you're not needed, you're used. When you are, you're negotiated. That was her pattern. When everything was fine, when I paid the bills, fixed the plumbing, rubbed her feet at night, I was invisible. When things got rocky, when she needed a warm home to fall back into, suddenly I was the best thing she ever had. But the in-between, that space where love is tested, where communication matters, where you're supposed to choose each other even when no one's watching, that's where she failed. She could never sit in silence with me and just be honest. She needed an audience, even if that audience was someone new. Someone who didn't know yet that she needed constant validation. I remember her dad coming by 2 weeks after the split. I kept the rest of her stuff in the garage like I said I would. He came to pick it up. Alone. He didn't say much. Just looked at me with this quiet understanding. Like he knew exactly what had happened. I helped him load the boxes. When we finished, he shook my hand and said, "You didn't deserve this." That was all. And it was more than Brooke ever said. After that, she tried a new angle, gifts. Left on my porch. A bottle of my favorite whiskey. A pair of gloves I'd once mentioned losing. A book we read together early in our relationship. A dog-eared copy with a sticky note that read, "You once said this made you believe in us." I returned them all. In a box. Unopened. With a note of my own. Returned to sender. The truth is, I didn't need reminders. I remembered everything just fine. I remembered the nights I sat waiting for her to come home, pretending I wasn't checking the time. I remembered the way she started dressing up and saying it wasn't for anyone in particular. I remembered the sting of that joke at the party and the shrug that followed. The moment I realized she'd rather flirt with a stranger than look me in the eye. And I remembered the silence. The silence that said, "I already left. I'm just waiting for you to figure it out." So I figured it out. And now, I wasn't negotiating with anyone. After she stopped knocking, calling, pleading. After the gifts stopped showing up on the porch and the texts slowed to a crawl, there was nothing left but silence. And that's when I started to hear myself again. It was subtle at first. I didn't wake up to some grand epiphany. There was no motivational speech playing in the background. Just quiet. A kind of stillness that creeps in when the chaos finally burns itself out. I slept through the night. That was new. No checking my phone in the dark. No lying awake rehearsing arguments I'd never have. No worrying about what mood I'd find when I got home from work. I just slept, deeply, dreamlessly. And in the mornings I had coffee without tension. Without someone stomping down the stairs already irritated at the world. Without having to guess whether today's silence meant stress or punishment. First, it was almost disorienting. Peace felt foreign. I'd lived under so much subtle emotional noise that I forgot what absence could feel like. Not loneliness, not quite. Just space. Open, unfiltered space. I started to fill it. I filed for divorce. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't blast music or pour a drink to celebrate. I just sat in front of the computer with my lawyer on speakerphone and walked through each step. Simple. Dry. Necessary. No anger in my tone. No revenge in my voice. Just detachment. I wanted out and I wanted out clean. The house was mine. We had agreed on that early. There were no kids, no tangled businesses or shared debts. She got her car, a few accounts we'd kept separate, and a list of items I couldn't care less about. There were no battles over silverware or framed photos. I wasn't interested in division, only distance. After the paperwork, the silence deepened. Not just from her. From the world. There's this strange thing that happens after a breakup, especially one that ends like ours did. People treat you like you've been contaminated. They're kind, sure. They say the right things, you're strong. Better now than later. You'll bounce back. but they keep their distance. They don't know what to say after the third week, once the shock wears off. So I kept to myself. And honestly, I liked it. I started fixing the garage shelf I'd been putting off for over a year. Repainted the downstairs bathroom. Donated the throw pillows she insisted on buying that never matched anything. Boxed up the wine glasses we never used. I even cleared the spice rack she left behind, half of which I couldn't pronounce, let alone cook with. Felt small, but every task was a step. A reminder, this house is mine now, and so is this life. Jake and Sam started inviting me out more. Both of them had known something was wrong for a while but kept quiet, out of respect or discomfort. I'm not sure. We grabbed beers, watched games, played cards like we used to before life became couples dinners and social calendars designed by someone else. Sam asked me once, point blank, "Do you miss her?" I didn't lie. No, I miss who I thought she was. He nodded and didn't press. That's the kind of friends I have. They don't force you to dig if you're not ready. Over time, the silence became a rhythm. I learned to enjoy the sound of my own thoughts again. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. Stopped wondering if someone was hiding something behind every polite smile. Stopped rehearsing imaginary confrontations with someone who had already walked out of the truth long before she walked out of the house. One weekend, I took a drive to the lake by myself. It was where we'd gone early in our marriage. Just once, during a weekend getaway when things were still new. She'd taken a photo of me standing on the dock, grinning like an idiot. She said it was her favorite picture of me. I sat in the same spot years later without the smile, without the camera, and I realized. I still recognized the man from that photo. He wasn't gone, just buried. Buried under years of compromise that only went one way. Buried under pretending I was okay when I wasn't. Buried under bending to keep the peace, to keep her happy, to keep something alive that had already flatlined. The silence helped me hear the difference between what I wanted and what I tolerated. And when I looked around that lake, I thought, this is the man she didn't see. This is the version of me she left behind. And I didn't blame her anymore. Because the truth is, she wasn't looking for someone to love. She was looking for someone to reflect back what she wanted to believe about herself. And the moment I stopped doing that, the moment I stopped being the mirror, she stopped seeing me at all. After that, I stopped responding to her emails. First, I'd been polite, professional, cordial, but I saw the pattern. Each message started as a check-in, hope you're well, and ended as a hook. Do you ever think about us? She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was fishing for relevance. So I started blocking her numbers. Every new one. She switched email accounts once, then twice, then tried reaching out through mutual friends. One even dropped off a letter she wrote, just in case I wanted to hear her side. I didn't read it. I burned it in the backyard fire pit. There was no side. There was only what happened. You either honor a person's heart or you don't. And when you don't get to write an epilogue for them. Not after you walked out of the story mid-chapter. I started running again. Slowly at first. Around the block. Then to the park. Then 2 miles. Then 4. Not to punish myself. Not to escape. Just to feel my body move forward 1 foot after the other. A rhythm I could count on. There's something sacred about momentum. About choosing to move when you could have stayed stuck. I fixed my old boat, too. The one I kept saying I'd get around to. The motor had sat rusting for years. One Saturday, I spent 6 hours elbow-deep in grease, muttering at stripped screws and worn-down bolts. I cursed more than I should have. But when that engine finally coughed to life, I stood there and laughed out loud like a kid. No one saw it. No one needed to. That moment was for me. I even started dating again. Not seriously. Not fast. But I met people. A nurse who listened more than she talked. A teacher who hated small talk and only asked real questions. I told them the truth when they asked. Not all of it, but enough. They didn't run. They didn't flinch. Some dates went nowhere. 1, maybe 2 had potential. But I didn't cling. I didn't chase. Because I wasn't trying to fill a void. I was just open. And that's what the silence gave me. It didn't tell me what to do. It reminded me of who I am when no one's telling me how to be. And for the first time in years, I liked the sound of my own life. She begged for one last talk, claimed she was truly sorry. Her friend said, "She can't believe you're really done." I told her, "I'm not in her play anymore." I saw her once in a parking lot. She stared at me like a stranger hoping to be recognized. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I kept walking. I wasn't being cold. I was just finally free. The divorce went through. No drama. I didn't fight over things, I fought for peace. Now I wake up without dread. I make my own coffee, my own choices. I go on slow runs, read in silence, date with no fear. She moved somewhere across the river. I don't ask. I don't care. Her story isn't mine to carry anymore. Mine's just getting started.